Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I want to go over some subtle differences between the low bar and the high bar squat and how incorporating both of them into your programming can help you with efficiency in your squatting technique and how to improve your squat in general. So stay tuned. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Thank you guys for tuning into the video. So just some key subtle differences before we get into the high bar versus low bar squat. Well, whenever we're looking at squatting, one of the main things that we want to focus on is making sure that the bar stays over our center of mass or midfoot. So what that means is if we are to analyze a video of us squatting and we see that the bar starts traveling forward, now granted there are going to be, when we start reaching maximal weights, we may encounter some variance in the bar path, which is normal, right? But if we notice that we have an exaggerated bar path going forward, that indicates that we're going to be putting more pressure onto our forefoot where our toes are. What we want to be able to do is apply more pressure towards our heels so the bar stays more centered. Now, vice versa, if we see that the bar path is traveling further backwards, we're putting more pressure onto our heels or our calcaneus, and we want to be able to apply more pressure towards our toes so that we kind of reverse engineer that whole scenario, and then we keep the bar over midfoot. So remember that there is going to be, we don't have enough ability to lift maximum weights off the floor unless that the bar is centered over midfoot. So that's just one key thing that I want to go over. All right, so first up we have the high bar squat. So what is the high bar squat? So typically what you will see out of many lifters that the high bar squat is typically when the bar is placed right alongside our upper trapezius or like the highest point to our upper back. And essentially what that does is it places more of the force, so to speak, onto our quadriceps, because at that point, when we are descending into a squat pattern with the bar up on our upper trapezius, we have to have more forward knee travel, which is going to increase, essentially what happens there is we have an increased moment arm at the quadriceps muscle. So just to go over this, so with the height of the barbell, I usually like to go about upper chest or collarbone level. For my hand placement is just about shoulder width apart. I'm going to go underneath the barbell, so it is sitting on top of my upper traps. I like to get my whole body underneath the bar, right? Because if we are to extend from, with our body position out that way, we're going to be we're going to have to put more force into the barbell in order to get the rack off or the bar off the rack. However, we want to make this transition as efficient as possible. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go all the way underneath the bar here. My whole body is underneath. I am then going to take a deep breath. I'm expanding into my abdominals, but I'm also creating that 360 brace. So what I'm doing here, now I'm going to extend my hips and I'm going to walk out. So one common thing that we want to observe whenever we're performing a barbell squat, you will often hear the term screw your feet into the floor. However, one thing that we want to be able to look into is not only where the bar is tracking alongside us sagittally, which I will be recording after this. However, when we are squatting down, we want to take into account what our feet are doing. If we get into this bottom position and we notice that our toes are coming off the floor, right? We want to be able to understand that we need to be able to apply pressure into our big toes or our feet, right? So I'm going to rack this. So whenever we are looking at performing a squat, right, we want to ensure that the whole foot stays flat on the floor so that we're able to apply the most pressure into the ground. This same concept applies with the heel and the toes when we are looking at center mass of the barbell. If we see that our foot is starting to come off to the side a little bit, essentially what that means is that we're not able to get into that full foot on the ground, and we might be lacking some pressure into or basically we're lacking pronation at the foot, which we need to work on by applying pressure through the big toe. So that was the front squat, or that was the high bar squat from a kind of like a oblique angle. Now I'm going to go into the low bar squat. All right, so now just to go over the low bar squat. So the low bar squat is a little bit of a different variant than the high bar squat. When we look at the high bar squat, we saw that the bar was resting right upon our upper trapezius. And typically what occurs is that if we want to keep the center of mass over the midfoot, we will see that we have a greater amount of knee drive or knee driving forward, right? which creates a little bit more of a greater moment arm at the quadriceps. However, with the low bar squat, we are going to see that the bar is a little bit more posteriorly on our upper back, right? Or more more posteriorly. It's going down our upper back a little bit more. It's sitting a little bit right around our rear deltoid muscles, right? So what we see there is that when we shift the bar over a little bit extra, we're going to see that there's going to be more torque placed upon the lumbar spine and the hips. So just to go about this, what we're going to see. So if I am setting up similar to the high bar squat, hand placement is all preferential, but what I typically like to do is about my hands about shoulder width apart. Same kind of thing as the high bar squat. I'm going to come under, however this time I'm going to be placing the bar more posteriorly down my upper back, so it is sitting right on top of my rear deltoid. So I'm kind of creating that shelf with my upper back. So I'm coming in, my whole body is coming underneath the bar, big 360 brace, extending the hips, and I clear the hooks coming out of the rack. I'm going to take a few steps back, get myself all nice and set up. Now I'm into this position. I will be recording this from another view, like a sagittal view, but from what you may be able to see here is I'm actually leaning forward a little bit compared to the high bar squat. What that basically means is now that I'm more hinged forward and I'm lengthening out the hamstrings, I'm keeping the center of mass over, I'm keeping the barbell over my midfoot here. I'm taking a nice 360 brace. I'm going to descend down, so I'm over in this kind of position. Again, when we're here, we want to make sure that a whole foot is flat on the ground so that we're able to apply most force into the ground. And then I'm going to drive up, and then I'm going to re-rack. Perfect. All right. So that is the low bar squat from kind of a oblique angle. Now I'm going to show you guys it from the sagittal view. All right. So as promised, this is the high bar and the low bar squat from a more sagittal view. So like we were talking about before when we were going over the high bar squat, it's going to be typically sitting right on our upper trapezius. So I'm going to go underneath the bar. The bar is sitting right on top of my upper trapezius here. It is not on my neck, but it's on my upper trapezius. I'm going to create that 360 brace, full body underneath the bar, and then I extend my hips, and I walk out. So I am here and now. What I'm going to strive for, big brace, I'm going to descend, and we're going to strive to keep the center of mass over the midfoot and come back up. Just to perform it for reps, we are here. So when we are doing this, typically what you'll see is we'll see a little bit greater amount of knee drive over the toes. Basically what we're trying to see there is we're looking at the moment arm between the hip and the knee. Now with the high bar squat, it's going to be a little bit greater on the knee joint. So we're going to have a little bit more quadriceps torque basically. So just one more time, big breath in, coming down here, and then back up, and then we will rack. So one key important note that we should implement is whenever we are re-racking the bar, we want to strive to walk into the rack so that we don't misjudge the rack and bad things happen. So that is the high bar squat. All right, so you guys saw the high bar squat from the sagittal view. Now we're going to go into the low bar squat from the sagittal view. So same kind of setup. Hands are about shoulder width apart. And then when I go underneath the barbell here, I am striving to create a lot of upper back tension. However, I'm going to be trying to place the bar over right about, let's say, probably about mid-trapezius level after I create the shelf with my upper back. So I'm here, going at the bar. Now this was high bar squat. I'm going to shift the bar a little bit lower. So I'm right about here. So I'm creating that shelf with my upper back. Same thing, 360 brace, extend the hips. I stand up and I walk out. So as you can see here, I'm a little bit more hinged forward. I'm kind of creating a little bit of tension in my hamstring just by flexing my hips forward, right? So I'm going to create that 360 brace. I'm going to descend. So I come here and I come right back up. Now my bar path may be slightly off, But what we want to strive for is to keep the center mass of the barbell over a midfoot. So we're here, big breath, and we descend and up. And then when we go to re-rack, we want to walk all the way into the rack and then drop. So that way we are safe with how we are re-racking the bar and we don't mess anything up. So thank you guys for tuning into the video today, going over the little tutorial between the high and the low bar squat. So just to kind of summarize everything that we went over today. So when we were looking at the high bar squat, typically what occurs is that the bar usually sits about roughly upper trapezius level. After we unrack the bar and we go to squat, usually what you want to see is that the bar travels over midfoot and that we are keeping the foot flat on the ground. So what you'll often see is that the knee travels further, right? And if we're primarily looking at the hip hinge or the hip and the knee joint, usually what you'll see is we'll have exert a little bit greater moment arm at the knee compared to the hip in this case, so that we are exerting more torque at the knee joint. Now, obviously the squat is a combination of multiple different joints, but if we're looking specifically at the knee versus the hip, the knee exerts a little bit greater moment arm compared to the hip in the high bar squat. Now, if we were to look at the low bar squat, usually the bar sits right around mid trapezius level. Everybody has a little bit different preference, right? Based on their own anatomy and just personal preference. However, typically what you'll see is that the low bar squat, the bar usually sits right about mid trapezius level. So after we've unracked the bar and we go to squat, what we want to see is the center mass of our body, which usually constitutes the weight of the barbell, or the mass of the barbell and gravity, which makes up the weight. What you'll typically see is if we have a decent bar path, that the hip joint will exert a greater moment arm. So when we look at moment arm, we are usually looking at the perpendicular distance between the center mass and the pivoting hint, or the pivot point. So in this case, if we were to compare the hip and the knee joint, the hip joint is going to have a little bit greater distance compared to the knee. Therefore, it's exerting a little bit greater moment arm at the hip joint. So those are just some things that we want to take into consideration whenever we are designing a program or whenever we're executing or performing the lift in general. We want to be able to see what movements are kind of taxing body parts more so compared to the others, so that we get a good variant in our programming. So hope you guys enjoyed this video as much as I did making it. Leave a comment down below if you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching, and here's to getting strong.